Why is a young man whose terrifying revelations about the pandemic and the ruins in Turkey materialized with mathematical precision today screaming about impending collapse? Indian ruler Abhigya Anand delivers his verdict. From 2026, a 5-year period of great silence and sorrow will begin. Humanity awaits a forced reboot, during which the planet will be washed in tears and blood. According to his latest forecasts, the Earth no longer intends to tolerate human pride and will activate a self-purification protocol. We will face not just a climate crisis, but a fatal shift dictated by the dance of the planets. In April 2026, Saturn and Mars will meet in a deadly battle in the sky. This astronomical duel is the reason why Anand insists on an immediate escape from risk zones. The position of the stars indicates that the first crushing blows will fall on karmic nodes. Points where the accumulated negativity of civilization and geological pressure have reached the limit. In Vedic philosophy, Saturn Shani is a harsh punisher, demanding reckoning. In 2026, it enters the house responsible for the strength of the Earth's crust. Its ally will be Rahu, the shadow node, personifying sudden chaos and the destruction of foundations. Anand compares the coming planetary configuration to a giant resonant hammer. The Earth's core will begin to pulsate at frequencies that will literally turn the lithospheric plates into dust. Imagine a crystal dome being struck simultaneously by 2 titans. Sooner or later, the structure will develop a fatal crack. This is precisely the kind of rift that awaits the planet in the spring of 2026. Mars, the symbol of wars and fires, will also contribute to this blaze. Its destructive charge will cause not only civil strife, but also the awakening of dormant volcanoes and spolins. Abhigya warns, the ground beneath our feet will turn into molten lava for those accustomed to unshakable prosperity. The catastrophe will affect not only exotic destinations, but also the world's financial capitals, perched above the abyss. Planetary chaos will disrupt ocean currents, and the melting of the polar ice caps will become so rapid that coastal cities will be submerged in a matter of weeks. Anand insists these strikes will be surgically precise. That's why he's calling for families to be evacuated right now. His prophetic visions have already mapped out the routes of destruction. Where some cities will burn, others will disappear into the abyss. Who will be in the front line of fire? Shocking. But the epicenter of Saturn's wrath will be those regions we're accustomed to calling tourist paradises. Anand calls them the seams of karmic decay. In 2026, Japan, Turkey, and Indonesia could be shaken by tremors exceeding magnitude 9. The seer paints a dire picture for Japan. The ocean could forever engulf vast swathes of land. In Indonesia, the ashes of awakened mountains will obscure daylight over the entire Asia. Turkey, still raw from its past wounds, will once again encounter fault lines where the Earth was once considered a monolithic rock. A no less tragic end awaits South America. The Andes Mountains will begin to move, causing colossal mudflows that will wipe civilization from the face of the Earth. The clairvoyant urges evacuations to begin as early as 2026. The logic is simple. At the moment of catastrophe, transportation hubs and roads will be instantly paralyzed. Don't wait for the first shock, warns Anand. It will be followed by the point of no return. These events will trigger an exodus of peoples unseen in ancient history. Owners of luxury apartments and glass offices will instantly realize that their concrete jungles are mere fragile cages in the face of nature's fury. However, if you thought the would bypass the West, you are mistaken. Anand's most frightening prediction concerns the golden state of the United States. Why the prophet does Abhigya foretell the fate of San Francisco as a ghost town by 2026? When Abhigya speaks of the future of North America, his tone turns icy. The west coast of the United States is marked on his maps as a zone of total destruction. According to his celestial calculations, California is preparing for its fiery end. In the spring of 2026, a fatal contact between 2 elements will occur here, upheaval of the earth and all-consuming fire. According to the visions of a young astrologer, the legendary geological monster, the San Andreas Fault, will finally awaken from its long slumber, and its voice will terrify the planet. However, this will not be a run-of-the-mill earthquake. Anand predicts a fatal domino reaction. The first tremors will turn gas distribution networks and power lines into a heap of twisted metal, causing a firestorm of unprecedented intensity. The fight against the fires will be futile. The city's waterways will burst, leaving rescuers powerless in the face of the elements. In my visions, the blooming gardens of California disappear, giving way to endless walls of roaring flames. Abhigya prophesies. Following the fiery inferno, a great desiccation will come. A protracted drought will finally finish off the state's agriculture, causing a food shortage that will spread like a fever across North America. The seer warns, don't rely on the state machine. The colossal scale of the disaster will paralyze any attempts at official assistance. The Indian master makes another ominous remark. Residents of tech capitals, accustomed to trusting gadgets, will discover in 2026 that their expensive devices have turned into useless plastic. Without drainage and communication, civilization will roll back overnight to the harsh realities of the 19th century. The only chance of survival is immediate migration to the central regions of the continent, away from the breath of the ocean and tectonic faults. Those who decide to wait it out risk finding themselves deadly trapped between burning forests and collapsed overpasses. While the Western world plunges into chaos, on the other side of the globe, an ancient giant awakens. What role have the heavens assigned to Russia in this global spectacle? Will it be among the victims, or does it hold the hidden trump card mentioned by the prophet? Next, we will touch on the topic of the northern flood and the mystical mission the stars have ordained for Kamchatka. Where water has always been the cradle of life, in 2026 it will become an instrument of severe karmic atonement. A Vedic astrologer singles out the South China Sea and the eastern fringes of the Indian Ocean as zones of extreme danger. His calculations are inexorable. After April 2026, a powerful gravitational anomaly will trigger gigantic tides and a series of deep-sea earthquakes, which will generate a tsunami of unprecedented power. Anand is convinced that the coastal regions of Vietnam, the Philippines, and South China will bear the brunt of a blow that will overwhelm even modern dams. The elements will arrive silently, but they will engulf everything built on the foundations of human greed and shifting sand, he warns. This is not just a storm, but a complete reshaping of the planet's coastline. The prophet strongly recommends that residents of coastal areas within a 50-kilometer radius of the water seek refuge inland at higher elevations. The situation is exacerbated by the fact that cataclysms in the Indian Ocean, fueled by the influence of the shadow planet Rahu, will engulf even those islands that have been considered bastions of tranquility for centuries. A general climate collapse will make evacuation a nearly impossible mission. It's time for humanity to acknowledge that the era of carefree beach hotels is over. The time has come for a battle for existence on high ground. However, the water element will not be limited to tropical latitudes, but will also target the cold northern latitudes. Borders. What fate awaits the Black Sea coast and northern ports of Russia during this turbulent period? Moving on to describing the future of the Russian Federation, Abhigya Anand changes his rhetoric. His words no longer carry fatalistic dread. They resonate with restrained but unwavering hope. He describes Russia as a fortress protected by a unique metaphysical dome and natural armor. But even this invisible shield could crack under the onslaught of planetary transformations in 2026. The main challenge for Russian territories will be waterborne expansion, which will peak in the spring and summer of 2026. Northern regions will be under attack. The rapid melting of Arctic ice, caused by global overheating, will lead to unprecedented flooding of the Great Siberian and northern rivers. These will not be the usual spring floods, but raging torrents capable of reshaping the landscape of entire regions. Nevertheless, Anand is hastening. Calm down. Thanks to a strict governance structure and the genetic resilience of the people, critical human casualties will be avoided. Russia will demonstrate to the world how discipline and unity can tame chaos. The second frontier of confrontation with nature will be the Black Sea coast, where the elements will test people's resilience. On Russia's southern borders, nature will begin to behave inexplicably, from violent tornadoes reminiscent of tropical hurricanes to sharp, illogical fluctuations in sea levels. Abhigya calls on residents of Crimea and the Krasnodar territory to maintain extreme vigilance, especially during the summer months of 2026. However, Anand is convinced that this crucible of trials will not be a death sentence for the country, but a point of rebirth. The crisis will provide a powerful impetus for the agricultural sector and breathe new life into those remote corners and hinterlands that have remained in oblivion for decades. Russia will be reborn through labor and unity with the earth. But there is a special zone on the country's map where Earth's flesh and primordial fire are intertwined in a deadly knot. Why does the Indian ruler's voice tremble at the mention of Kamchatka? And what sleeping titan is preparing to assert itself on the eastern fringes? In 2026, the Far East will become an arena for the clash of tectonic giants. In his calculations, Anand identifies the Kamchatka region and the Kuril chain as zones of critical seismic stress. However, this conceals a key difference from the fatal scenarios prepared for America or Japan. For eastern Russia, Anand foresees controlled fury. The eruptions of gigantic volcanoes and tremors in 2026 will cause the entire northern hemisphere to tremble, but this will resemble the operation of a giant safety valve. Through the fire-breathing mountains of Kamchatka, the planet will release excess accumulated pressure. The soil will blaze, but this fire will not bring total destruction, but a harsh reminder. Humanity's true place in the hierarchy of the universe, explains the oracle. Nevertheless, he insists on the full mobilization of all the region's resources. April 2026 will be the period of highest risk. The main danger will come not so much from lava flows as from suffocating ashfalls and the irreversible poisoning of underground water sources. For Russia, these months will be a decisive test of the effectiveness of rescue and communication systems. Remarkably, Anand also sees a hidden blessing in these threatening events. The awakening of the Earth's depths will, in the long term, give this harsh region the keys to colossal geothermal energy. For now, the Prophet's main advice to the Far Easterners is to forge their spirit and maintain contact with ancestral traditions. Russia will stand firm where others fall, thanks to its centuries-old fortitude and ability to survive in inhumane conditions. But the rampant elements are only the tip of the iceberg. While some nations struggle with floods and fires, others will face a far quieter and more merciless enemy, the dead silence of empty fields. What does the Great Drought of 2026 promise for the world? Perhaps Anand's most dire prediction concerns not earthquakes, but what will come after them. According to Vedic rhythms, 2026 will be a time of planetary famine. An ominous conjunction of Mars and Saturn will create conditions in which the world's main breadbaskets will find themselves in the scorching grip of parching heat. This disaster will cover southern Europe, Australia, and vast agricultural territories of North America. In Spain, Italy, and Greece, the sun will transform from a source of life into a merciless executioner. Anand predicts that the great rivers that have nourished these lands for centuries may degrade to dusty ditches. This will lead to the complete collapse of grain, wine, and oil production. But the root of the problem is deeper. The seer speaks of the metaphysical sterility of the earth. Humanity has cynically exploited resources for too long, and now the planet is taking a forced, harsh pause. In 2026, Australia will become the scene of such massive forest fires that dense soot will cover the skies over the entire southern hemisphere for weeks. This will create the effect of a volcanic winter, depriving flora of sunlight and completely ruining the remaining crops. In the United States, the central states, which fed half the world, will find themselves at the epicenter of a temperature hell that will literally scorch fields of corn and soybeans. Global food shortages will trigger an avalanche-like price surge and social unrest in megacities. Anand warns, in 2026, simple food will become more expensive than gold bars. He calls for a shift today to conscious asceticism, a rejection of excesses, and, crucially, learning to cultivate the land yourself, no matter where your patch of soil is. In this context, Anand once again mentions Russia as a state with a colossal strategic advantage. Its fertile black soil and the vast expanses of Siberia will be protected by nature itself, making it less vulnerable to global drought. This will transform the country into the world's main donor of life and food. While news reports in 2026 will be filled with images of collapsed skyscrapers and flooded megacities, the eyes of those seeking salvation will be drawn to the eastern part of the Russian Federation. In his Vedic calculations, Abhigya Anand directly identifies Siberia as the territory of the Great Exodus. He is deeply convinced that it is here that a new energy framework for the planet is being formed, capable of providing refuge for millions of refugees. The young man explains that in 2026, the climate scales will tip toward a sharp warming in the northern latitudes. Where permafrost has reigned for centuries, the soil will begin to awaken and breathe. Yes, this will create temporary difficulties for the old infrastructure, but in the long term, it will transform the harsh taiga into a flourishing new Eden. Siberia will cease to be associated with exile, becoming a symbol of human rebirth. Anand foresees an unprecedented migration. Even from previously prosperous Europe and America, those who have recognized the collapse of the old world will flock. In 2026, Russia will begin large-scale development of these lands, constructing a new type of settlement where advanced technologies will be seamlessly woven into the natural landscape. The stars speak. Saturn, favoring order and structure, will support those who decide to build life on the monolithic foundation of Eurasia. Siberian rivers will become the world's main transport and resource arteries, and clean fresh water will become the most valuable asset on the planet. Abhigya advises immediate relocation to the east, arguing that it is there that future generations will be sheltered from the global storms battering the coasts. Anand paints a completely different, truly apocalyptic scenario for southern Europe. While Russia accumulates strength, the Mediterranean will face trials of biblical proportions. Under the fierce influence of Mars and the shadow planet Rahu, tectonic pressure in the European region will reach a critical point. This will awaken Italy's ancient guardians, the volcanoes Vesuvius and Etna. In 2026, their activity could reach peaks unseen by civilization for centuries. Black ash will obscure the sun over Rome and Naples, and rivers of lava will force thousands of people to abandon all their belongings in panic. Anand emphasizes, this is not a random freak of the elements, but the concentrated fury of the earth itself, whose balance has been upset by centuries of human greed. Southern Europe will find itself trapped between volcanic flames and merciless heat. Spain, Italy, and Greece will face record temperatures in 2026, turning cities into scorching cages. Tourism, the foundation of their economies, will crumble to dust, giving way to a brutal struggle for physical survival. The soothsayer warns, those who fail to grasp the scale of the disaster in time risk becoming trapped. The soil will turn to ash, and the water bitter. He urges people to seek escape routes now, while borders and transport hubs are still functioning normally. The era of the great purification of Europe will last for years. Many wonder why these devastating adversities have befallen civilization now. Abhigya Anand's answer is rooted in ancient truths and the immutable laws of karma. He proclaims, 2026 is a time of total score settling. The rulers believe the root cause of the planetary wrath is centuries-old violence against wildlife and the merciless animal extermination industry. In his messages, Anand places a frightening emphasis. Every drop of blood spilled in the world's slaughterhouses returns to humanity in the form of fiery lava or devastating hurricanes. He is deeply convinced that switching to a plant-based diet in 2026 will be not just an ethical choice, but the only path to salvation. Those who exclude the energy of death from their diet purify their personal destiny and create an invisible energetic shield around their families. Saturn, as the great judge and symbol of supreme justice, will certainly take this into account when distributing the blows of the elements. At the same time, in 2026, Rahu will fan the flames of illusion and aggression in the hearts of those who continue to feed on the suffering of living beings, depriving them of protection in the face of the coming chaos. Such an energetic imbalance will inevitably provoke outbreaks of mass mental confusion and waves of unmotivated cruelty in society. Anand calls on humanity to deep inner repentance and sincere prayer, emphasizing that in the face of disaster, religious differences are erased. He insists, only a collective transformation of consciousness and a decisive rejection of the culture of violence can soften the harsh scenario the stars have already mapped out for Earth. The survival of the species begins not with the construction of concrete bunkers, but with the purity of your thoughts and, importantly, with what's on your plate. This is the key message of the Indian sage for this turning point. Despite the oppressive atmosphere of 2026, Abhigya Anand assigns Russia a unique role in the global scenario. He asserts that the country possesses a unique metaphysical armor. While Western civilizations will be paralyzed by internal conflicts and growing social chaos, Russia will demonstrate remarkable unity. The seer explains this phenomenon by the fact that the spiritual code of the people is inextricably linked to traditional values and the sacred power of their native land. In 2026, Russia will emerge from the planetary storm renewed and strengthened. Anand particularly emphasizes the factor of strong-willed leadership, which will prevent the state machine from panicking and collapsing. According to Vedic maps, an invisible protective dome will form over Russia, capable of deflecting the most toxic planetary influences. Certainly, water cataclysms in the north and tectonic activity in the east will require colossal efforts, but they will not be fatal to statehood. Changes. The first and key rule is a cold analysis of geographic risks. On the contrary, Moscow in 2026 will become the architect of new global alliances based not on the greed of profit, but on principles of conscience and an ethical duty to nature. The world will cease to perceive Russia as a geopolitical rival, recognizing it as the main guarantor of resource and food stability. The spiritual renaissance that has begun in the Siberian hinterlands will become a beacon to which people from all continents will flock, escaping the darkness of the Great Reset. Russia will not only endure, it will become the foundation of a new type of civilization, born in the throes of 2026. Many are tormented by the question of when this heavenly wrath will subside and life will return to normal. Abhigya has a straightforward and stark forecast on this matter. The events of 2026 are merely a prelude to a grand cycle of great transformation that will last until 2040. According to the clairvoyant, we are witnessing the decline of an old era built on unbridled consumption and the disregard of cosmic laws. Until 2040, humanity will pass through a kind of filter, which Anand likens to a sieve. Everything artificial, corrupt, and weak will be mercilessly sifted out by history. This will affect not only the global financial system and national borders, but the very essence of human nature. The planet is literally shedding its old skin. The transformation will even affect the Earth's magnetic poles, inevitably leading to large-scale failures in the operation of complex electronics and satellite systems. This painful process contains a profound sacred meaning. Nature is restoring its violated balance. By 2040, the appearance of our planet will be transformed. Vast expanses currently considered deserted or uninhabitable will be transformed into new centers of prosperity. Russia and its eastern borders have been assigned a central mission in this process. The young prophet emphasizes, this period is not the end of the world, but the painful birth of a renewed world. Those who reject greed for the sake of spiritual growth and life in resonance with the biosphere will greet the dawn of a completely different era. This will be a time when the wisdom of ancestors and the technologies of the future will unite for the sake of creation. Abhigya Ananta's call "Save Families by Leaving Danger Zones" has become the main slogan of 2026. But what does this mean in practice? The seer offers specific recommendations for preserving life and sanity in this era.